Good evening, members and guests. We appreciate everyone being here. We've got some people that certainly want to come to the front and give us some great information. We'll allow, we always encourage questions, and we appreciate if you come up and ask the question here. We are using the information that Harold Schoeffler presented as part of when he was adopted, installed as a living legend back October 2010. That's the reason why I have 4 pages out there about everything that he's done. I couldn't, that if I'd have read everything that he's accomplished, that would be the total program. So I decided to use what he gave in ERATH, which I thought was certainly a huge honor, and we appreciate you, so we can claim you as a Lafayette guy. That was October the 9th, 2010, by the way, that induction. A native of Lafayette, Harold Schoeffler graduated from USL in 1961. In 1949, he began a lifetime relationship with the Boy Scouts, reaching the rank of Life Scout. He has served on the summer camp staff at Camp Thistlework for many years, the Evangeline Area Council of the Boy Scouts, at District Committee, member, Scout Master of Troop 405 from 41 to the present time, and received his following awards: District Award in Merit in 1984, Bronze Pelican 1985, Silver Beaver 1988, St. George Award 1988. From 1956 to 1960, he was a board member and a delegate representing the Lafayette Rod and Gun Club at LA Wildlife Federation. Harold served in his country in the U.S. Air Force, enlisting in an officer training school in 1961. In 1962, he was commissioned an officer and received Air Force Supply Officer of the Year Award. In 1965, he served as the chairman of the Rod and Gun Club, the Robbins AFB, and worked on many conservation habitat presentation project in central Georgia. Since 1974, Harold has been intimately involved in coastal conservation. He served as chairman of the conservation chair for the Acadian Group Sierra Club from 1974 to the present, wetlands chair from 1983 to 1991 of Delta Chapters Sierra Club, and conservation chair from 1992 to 2002. He served as chairman, co-founder of Save Our Coast, which through many court proceedings, stop shell drilling in Pontchartrain local days and the Gulf of Mexico from 1987 to 2003. He was board member of the Louisiana Coastal Coalition, a group dedicated in presenting Louisiana's eroding coast and wetlands. From 1987 to 1993, he serves as a member of the Department of Environmental Quality, State Environmental Board, and then 1970 to 74 served as chairman of the Acadiana Ozark Society. He was founding member of West Wind Energy System Technology, seeking and establish offshore energy of the future. In 1987, Harold presented to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service petition to place the Louisiana black bear on the endangered species list. In 1992, his efforts proved fruitful, and as a result of the successful lawsuit, the bear was placed on the endangered species list. In 2005, he was successful in forcing the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services to dedicate over 1 million acres of land of critical habitat for the recovery of the Louisiana black bear. In 1987 to 92, he served as support member of the City of Lafayette Solid Waste and Recycling Committee, setting up the state first recycling program. Harold has received the following awards for his work: Sierra Club highest conservation award in the state in 1983 to 89 and 91, 2005, and in 2004 he was voted Outdoorsman of the Year by the Acadiana Sportsman Association, Louisiana Wildlife Federation. In 1987, Conservatist of the Year, Woodman of the World, Lafayette Area, and the 1986 Conservationist of the Year by the Louisiana Wildlife Fisherman Non-Professional. We appreciate he's married to Sarah, and most everyone knows Sarah as well, and he has 6 children: Harold Jr., Demis, Todd, Catherine, Gordon, and Ted. We appreciate you being with us this evening. Thanks a lot for coming.
I got here because every now and then I'd have coffee with AJ, so AJ and I'd shoot the bull around Ticoons and solve the world's problems, most of them anyway. So he has to come and address your group, and I feel I know most of you here, and I'm honored to be here. I'll talk a little bit about energy because that's a pressing environmental issue, something that is a lot of changes coming about because of it. And famous things like Keystone are out there and fracking is out there. There's a lot of misunderstanding about some of those issues. But anyway, I'll talk a little bit about energy because Lafayette is at a turning point in where we're going with energy. There's changes that have to come about, and I'll just talk a little bit about that. And then AJ wanted me to mention some of the litigation that we were involved in protecting the rights of the public, mostly through commercial crawfishermen, to access public waters especially the Schoeffler Basin. So I'll talk about one of those cases. But anyway, energy. Wow. Lafayette gets its energy from coal. You know, we go flip on the lights and the lights work. That's really all I have to worry about, right? It's kind of like flushing the toilet. You flush the toilet, it works. That's great, you know. Our coal comes from Gillette, Wyoming. 1,507 miles from Alexandria, and it takes about 120 rail cars a day, about 950,000 pounds each. Now the railroad doesn't provide those cars. We have to buy those things at about the cost of $35 million. A year of shipping the coal, a train load every day, and one going back every day, amounts to about a $2.5 million bill to move that coal from Gillette, Wyoming to Alexandria. Now it's 11 miles from Alexandria to Boise, and it goes on the BNSF Railroad, and it costs $6.9 million to go those 11 miles. So we're paying all those bills. So coal is with us. Why is coal a problem? One, it's kind of filthy, and it's you know, when you look at what the impact of coal, we somewhat ignore the impact. We kind of, you know, refuse to look at. But we in the Sierra Club often want to actually see what's going on. So if you look at coal, most of it comes from Wyoming. According to a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, 39.5% comes from the Powder River Basin of central Wyoming. It has 13 extraction surface mining sites, 3 of which are 1, 2, and 3 largest in the world. You think the sinkhole over there by the corner is something? You ought to see what these big surface mining pits are. 3 or 4 dredges operating 24 hours a day with about 80 yards per scoop. That's about the size of this room. And when you drive, and I just did that, I drove on Highway 2 across central Wyoming from Casper to Grand Island, Nebraska, and the whole way you're driving along Highway 2 where all these rail cars are going. So it's continuous night and day, all these rail cars. And so you think, wow, the need for electricity is so insatiable that we just do about anything to get it and keep it going. How important electricity is. It's so important. The need continually grows, and you know. So we get this coal. Montana produces about 11.5%. So those 2 states are about 52% of the nation's coal output, and then all the rest, the other 48%, comes from about 30 states, including Louisiana. We have a big lignite coal operation up near Mansfield, where General Mouton was killed in the Civil War. Famous Lafayette military officer during the Civil War. It is astonishing to see that operation. It's a resource that's about 150 million tons. And when Coleco first went in, they bought fossil fuel rights, the rights to remove fossil fuel. Most people thought they were selling oil and gas rights. And so, of course, dredging it is quite an operation. You got about 20,000 acres that they've dredged so far. You got about 50 feet of dirt they have to remove, and then they got about a 200-foot vein of coal. Lignite coal is one step higher than dirt. It's low energy. You can't afford to haul it. So you have to build a power plant where the resource is. And the one up there run by Coleco up in Mansfield is the filthiest coal-operated plant in the country. We have that honor and distinction. But it does require removal of an awful lot, and there's no plan for recovery. They are actually digging up the bodies of Civil War veterans, both Union and Confederate, to extract this coal. And there's been no attempt. Their response when the state said, well, you got to preserve these burial sites, they said, oh, no, you'd have to pay us. And we figured to preserve these Civil War burial sites would cost the state $400 million. That's how much coal we would lose. So we've been up there with the Sierra Club and went to paddle a bayou up there. It's all on the maps. Brought a canoe up there. When we got to the bayou, it was all gone, all dug up. So we looked at real hard at how is this company getting away with doing all this destruction? Well, they're under a general permit from the Corps of Engineers. That's what if you want to put a little dock for a pirogue in a bayou, you get a general permit, a small pipeline. So they operate, and then it's hard to determine whether it's the Fort Worth district or the Vicksburg district of the Corps. We can't determine it. The lines are hard to define. So it's almost impossible to address all the damages that are done by that operation. And you're left, when you look up there, you see a beautiful pine forest turned to a moonscape. As far as I can see, it was all this black. And the recovery is not required till they exhaust the resource. From 1985 to 2005, we took out 15 million tons. So we have about 125 years more to go before they have to plant the first pine tree to recover. So, but thankfully our coal comes from Wyoming, and of course they're in the same boat. They don't have to do anything to recover the desert out there until they're through with the resource. But some of the problems with coal is it's going to get a lot more expensive, and Lafayette's caught in that boat. We just have a requirement that 30% of the carbon emissions have to go down, be reduced. It's 40% for Louisiana. And invariably, that's going to raise our rates something like 30 to 50%. We're paying 9 cents now. So if you're paying $300 a month, you can expect it to go $450 to $500. So Lafayette ought to be thinking about doing something else. And what are all the alternatives that make sense? One of the problems with coal is that it's very inefficient. It's a technology that's been around 150 years and it's worked well. You just burn coal and boil water and you get running through steam generators. But it's like the old steam train. If you shut it off, it takes about 24 to 30 hours at full energy output to restart it. So you don't want to shut it off. And you got another problem. It runs at 100%. You can't slow it down. So 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're burning peak power on a summer day. 2 o'clock in the morning, you're only using 1/3 of peak. So you're wasting 70%. No big deal, we're all paying for it. The ones who pay the most dearly for it are those that are businesses. Because there's a neat little way they charge you an enormous rate. In your house, whatever you use, you pay for. But a business pays peak demand charges. The most you use in 15 minutes in a month is what you charge all 720 hours of the month. We did looking at putting a wind farm in Vermilion Bay, and we're feeding into Abbeville. So we got all the charge from Coleco, who happened to be providing the power at the time. And of what they were paying for, they were only getting 40% of what they were paying for. And that's happening to businesses all over. And we're caught in that trap. And the reason behind it is that the industry has to provide that peak demand. And they want to be paid for it all the time. Because they have to run, they run in coal plants, they have to run at full power all the time, they can't slow it down. There's a lot better technology out there. One of the things is the combined cycle natural gas turbines. A coal plant runs at 6%. If you factor in what they lose during off-peak hours, it's more like 3%. There's an astonishing number out there. Of all the energy we produce at the power plants, only 1/3 ever gets to a consumer. 2/3 is lost because of a very inefficient grid system. Louisiana is the worst. We're one of the only states in the country that doesn't have 1 mile of direct current transmission. And direct current allows you to send power a long ways without losing it. A general rule of thumb, if you send a power 100 miles, you lose half of it. Our plant is 108 miles from here. Now, Coleco is doing a little better job with that because they can draw from closer power plants. They don't have to actually send the electrons at whole distance. So we may not be losing half, but we're losing probably 1/3 in that process. Another big weak link in the system is the transformers. The transformers you see out there look like a big old bucket out there. And it's one coil sitting in another coil, sitting in a solution that allows electrons to transfer easily. But there's a 30 to 50% loss right there. In other states, and the Sierra Club has been involved in this, lawsuits were filed to abandon this 1920s technology and go to solid-state transformers like you use when you plug in your cell phone to recharge. You ever notice when you plug it into your house, you have to have a transformer because they're converting it from 120 to 12 volts. If you plug it into a car, it is already 12 volts, so you don't need a transformer. So, but anyway, these transformers are an enormous loss, and they should be dealt with. And lawsuits that are filed all across the country, some courts have held that the transformers had to be replaced with new technology as they wear out. Typically, a transformer lasts 3 or 4 years, and so 3 or 4 years, you got most of them replaced. And other state rulings have said replace them all in a year. You would pay for these things in a couple of months. And it's just like direct current transmission. And you look at Texas, so far ahead of Louisiana. Texas is producing half of the nation's wind energy. And look at the impact, the economic impact of that. Texas has produced more jobs in the last 5 years than all the other 49 states combined. And low-cost energy is a big part of it. A wind farm can deliver a 10-year contract at 3 cents a kW. They're doing it. We're paying 9 cents. St. Martinville is 14 cents. Abbeville is 13 cents. So, you know, they also did something else real neat in Texas. They made the grid public. And what that means is that the public grid, they're not allowed to haul electrons for hundreds of miles. The Texas grid system controls the movement of electrons, and you might have a wind farm in Amarillo, and you can buy that wind farm power in Orange. You're not actually getting electrons. Those electrons are going to a lake or pool of power. And you're going to get your electrons from the closest generator. They don't want to waste hauling electricity all around and losing half of it. And virtually all their grid system is direct current, where the loss is reduced about 90%. One of the biggest cities in Brazil gets its power from 680 miles away from a hydroelectric dam, all direct current. Big wind farms in northern Wyoming will provide wind power to Las Vegas, 700 to 800 miles away, all direct current grids. We don't have any of it. So look at all these things. Wind power states, the 5 top wind power producing states in the last 5 years have had their electric rates, this is according to the American Wind Association, in the last 5 years, their rates have gone down a half, 0.39%. The nation has gone up 8%. So wind is a very stabilizing power. So we missed that. We have an enormous opportunity with wind offshore here. Stanford University, 2000 to 2002, did a 3-year study looking at 1,800 wind test sites. They're looking for the best wind, a uniform wind, roughly from 10 to 15 miles an hour. It's not a high wind that turns the system off, too low, they don't run. So uniform wind. And out of those 1,800 test sites, there were 23 Category 7 premier sites. 23 out of 1,800. 7 of them in coastal Louisiana. 4 on the entire East Coast, none on the West Coast. About 5 in Alaska, from one end of Alaska to another. 2 in the whole state of Texas, 1 on land and 1 at Galveston. So we sit here with a gold mine of wind, and with the technology here to go after it. Because to put wind turbines out in the bay or the Gulf is just like putting an oil rig. Not much difference at all. So we have this opportunity. We've not been able to move on it for one reason or another. So, getting back to Lafayette, what are its alternatives? Wind is probably not something that Lafayette would jump on, but something they could jump on would be combined cycle gas turbines. And we're familiar, one of the terms, the Siemens 600 is one we look at buying. It costs about $405,000 a megawatt. This is a 50 megawatt unit. And in its initial, this is a turbine engine that runs on natural gas or diesel, best on natural gas for our use. It's the same engines they use on aircraft. And the aircraft industry went through a real problem 25 years ago when their engines were just like our car engines. They're about 6-7% efficient. And the aircraft industry told the engine manufacturers, you either make your engine more efficient or we're all out of business. People want to be able to afford the tickets. They want to be able to fly. Engine manufacturers responded by upgrading their efficiency. Now our jet turbine engines on American aircraft is around 35% efficient. As high as 38%. The Russians are running engines that are 70% efficient. MiG-25 and a MiG-31 are using side-injected engines that are 70% efficient. We are running engines now that are 85% efficient, that don't even use a cooling system. They wanted to build them here in Lafayette. Our car engines are 6%. The Model T and the Jeep are about as efficient as our current car engines. We waste 94% through the cooling system, through the exhaust pipe. And so, when the turbine aircraft people were upgrading their efficiency, our automobile manufacturers should have been doing the same thing. It's a crime that they haven't. A 100,000-pound truck will get 12 miles per gallon. What should a 4,000-pound car do? Yeah. Think about it. The truck has a 400 horsepower diesel engine. It's 250 pounds per horsepower. It gets 12. that 4,000-pound car with a, say, a 200 horsepower engine is only 20 pounds per horsepower. What kind of mileage should it get? Why is that vast difference? You know, why haven't we jumped ahead of the Jeep, which was built in 1938? You know, I fault the automobile industry for, you know, we got all kinds of fancy gadgets on the cars. We do, but really, they haven't dealt with the major issue, how much it costs to drive it. So we need have a lot of improvements to do. But getting back to the turbine engines, the big advantage is initially they start with gas. After they run it takes 30 seconds to start them. After they run for 1 hour, they have the exhaust boils water and activates a steam turbine hooked up to the same generator. One side is a jet turbine engine, and the other side is a steam turbine. So your efficiency goes from 34% to 55%. Keep in mind a coal plant is only 3% efficient. The big advantage of the turbine engines is you can put multiple engines. If you need 500 megawatts like Lafayette does, Lafayette needs 425, we could put 10 engines of 50 megawatts each. And at night, when we're only using 30% of peak, we turn 7 engines off. When they're running, they're 10 times more efficient, but you can turn them off and you can restore them. And that technology could bring our electric rates to half of what we're paying now. How do we do that? There's another big issue out there. I mean, this was happening throughout, this is why coal plants in Pennsylvania, a half a mile from the coal mine, are shutting down. And they go into this technology, because you can turn them on and off. They're a lot more efficient to start with, but the biggest efficiency is that you're not running them when you don't need them. Lafayette's coal plant is going to cost us a fortune. It was good when we built it, but it's time to jump off that horse and do something. And you can look at Lafayette, its history. In 1896, Lafayette built its own power plant. And they built it because they were told it would be 20 years, 30 years before electricity would ever come to Lafayette. A year later, when they tried to decide whether they're going to put SLI or whatever it was back in those days, the only community around here that had electricity was Lafayette. So that's where the school came, because we had electricity. So over a century, we've made a lot of real good decisions with electricity. And we're at a point now where we need to move forward again. One of the interesting, just mentioned quickly about Sasol. I'm real familiar with that process because working with engineers in Liberia and in the country of Nigeria, we worked on barges that would take natural gas and produce gasoline and diesel and electricity. It's called the Fischer-Tropsch process. It's been around since 1922. And for Sasol, this is a South African company, they would gasify coal. And from that coal gas, they produce gasoline and diesel. Now the process also works with natural gas. It works with landfill gas. It works with cow manure gas. It works with renewable gas. And so it's very efficient. Right now, oil is $100 a barrel. Natural gas is about $3.75. To make gasoline and diesel from natural gas, you need 10 units of gas. So that's $37 worth of gas. That would make you 42 gallons of diesel or gasoline. The reason Sasol is doing it, the cost to gasify coal is around $18 a million BTUs. It's $3.75 for the same product here. Sasol provides about 80% of all the fuel for cars and trucks in South Africa. They can ship a gallon of gasoline from Lake Charles to South Africa for a penny a gallon. The reduced cost to them is enormous. It should be to us. It's a shame that we haven't pushed forward to make our own Exxons and Shells and so forth produce, instead of refinery fuel, produce Fischer Tropsch fuel. It's very high energy. The diesel is 78 cetane. Refinery diesel is 42. The gasoline is 105 octane. Most of what you buy in your car is 87. Everything you put in your car or in a diesel truck has sulfur in it, and the Fischer Tropsch fuel has zero sulfur. Clean burning is hydrogen, and so it's great that it's happening here. One of the side benefits of the Sasol plant is going to produce 165,000 barrels a day of gasoline and diesel and other products. But it also has enough waste heat to produce about 1,400 megawatts of power. It can provide all the electricity between the Texas border and Morgan City, everything in between. Lafayette uses about 425, Lake Charles about 300. So, and this would be super cheap electricity. You're talking about it's all renewable. It's waste heat recovery. They produce steam and run it through steam turbines. I initiated a discussion with Lafayette and with this company for Lafayette to purchase some of that power. What happened, you think, is Texas stepped in, and Texas only has to move this power about 20 miles into their grid. When it's in their grid, somebody from Amarillo can buy that Lake Charles power for a dirt cheap price. And if you got the lowest price energy on the block, you don't need a Chamber of Commerce. The world will beat a path to your door. So, we look at all these opportunities, and we're in Louisiana. We're in a part of this revolution of natural gas and oil. Phenomenal. The U.S. now is the biggest producer of oil in the world. We're over 10 million barrels a day. We use 18 million barrels. 3 million barrels a day is coming from the Canadian tar sands. We could be energy independent, especially if we use the Fischer Tropsch process for our own needs. I would guess that this South African company is going to send nearly everything they make to South Africa, where their market is. But we have this opportunity. We're and we're sitting in a situation here where we're just at the tip of the iceberg. The David Jones well that is sitting right here in Vermilion Parish, if they bring it in, and when they bring it in, it will be the biggest gas well on earth. It's got some interesting challenges. Some of which the downhole pressure is 25,000 psi. The BP well that blew out was 14,000 psi, so it's 11,000 pounds higher. It is in a gas cell that goes from Middle Terrebonne Parish to Calcasieu Parish, out about 18, 20 miles, and in about 20 miles. And it goes from 30,000 feet to 50,000 feet. In that one cell is enough gas to produce the energy needs of this country for the next 800 years. Those are not my numbers. Those are Minerals Management Service numbers. The big issue is successfully harvesting it. Because with that high pressure is super high temperatures. Bottom hole temperature is about 475 degrees. Steel loses strength at about 430, 450, something like that. The well, David Jones, is 30,800 feet, straight downhole well. They have a pipe that's high temperature alloy from Germany that has a 3-inch inside diameter and a 4-inch wall thickness. And the Cameron Works in Houston is working on a Christmas tree I have one of my Eagle Scouts that's an engineer, probably hundreds working on the Christmas tree, which they mounted on the well about 6 months ago. Did not pass test. So they're back to the drawing board. But this is one well of 5 that have already been drilled. David Jones is the first one we're bringing in. There's one drilled at Rockefeller, one off of Marsh Island, and one in the basin at Bayou Booty. So that's a revolution, a whole new oil field, and amazing challenges that have to be met to make it successful. But you can be sure gas and the ability of it to be transferred to diesel and gasoline is a big part of our future. AJ wanted me to mention that we've been getting off the energy, but in our last answer question about energy, he wanted to mention about one of our legal cases. And the news media does a very poor job following the real news in an area. One of our cases was a Larry Daigle case. It goes back to '98. This Larry Daigle was a hard-working fisherman that fished along Bayou Mystic Creek in the basin north of Duck Lake. A wild area, long ways to get to it by boat. And he's a hard-working fisherman. And one of the big land companies decided that he was fishing on their land. So they were going to arrest him. This was the time that the landowners decided we're going to form the Schoeffler Crawfish Conservation Association and make all the fishermen pay a duty, pay a 20 or 25% of their catch. They had to buy a permit from the landowners and so forth. And we met with attorneys, met with the crawfishermen and told them, look, tell them to go to hell, get a U.S. flag stick on the side of the boat and say, you're a citizen of the U.S., you have a right to fish in the waters that are commercially viable. That, if you use water commercially, then those are public waters. So I came to a test, and he had 7 charges of criminal trespass. And the first charge is $500 fine, 6 months in jail. And these judges would not suspend jail sentences for the crawfishermen. They sent them to jail. And so with 7 charges, this guy was going to be in jail 10 years, maybe longer. So he called me, and I called Mr. Mike Osborne, a friend of mine that we'd fought shell dredging for years with, and first thing he said, look, go take a field trip out there and see if this guy's got a place that's worth fighting over. So I did. And this is a swamp area that's well underwater. At the time, the water was 8 feet of water where he was arrested, 8 feet deep in the swamp. So anyway, called the lawyer back and said, we can fight for this. I think this is water deep enough to run a crew boat through. So ends up in Judge Conner's court in St. Martinsville. And I called the judge and I said, we need more than 15 minutes to handle Larry Daigle's case. Well, Harold, what do you need? I see 5 days. Well, that's unheard of for a trespass case. It's usually 5 minutes. You didn't go to jail. So, but anyway, he agreed to it. And, often say the Lord and the facts are with us on these environmental issues. And we're not only fighting for the rights of the fishermen to be there. We're fighting for the rights of everyone who wants to enjoy the basin to be there. Somebody wants to just go brim fishing with his kids. Somebody wants to go take pictures of the beautiful basin or just paddle through it. And so it's worth fighting for. So lo and behold, the president of the American Maritime Administration calls and he said he wants to help. He is the premier witness on the Exxon Valdez case. And I said, you're going to have to visit this site. He said, I'm well aware of it. And I have a crew, and I have my team. We have all the test equipment and so forth. we needed at least 2 or 3 trips to the site. And he said, so what's it going to cost Larry Daigle? 0. So we intend to defend that fisherman. He's not only defending his rights, but we're defending the rights of anyone that want to use those waters. So we went through 5 days of trial and had, I guess at the end of the 5 days, I think we had the judge confused. So he called me a week later. He says, Harold, said, look, if I listen to you guys, I think I could drive a crew boat through that spot where he's fishing. And if I listen to the district attorney, I think I can walk on that land with my Sunday shoes and not get the bottom wet. He said, I have to visit it. I said, I agree with you. A picture's worth 1,000 words, a beam there is worth 1,000 pictures. So we hauled him out there, and he said, well, the DA is going to have the landowners out there. I said, they have to be. So we got out there, and the landowners got the young fella, the agent for the landowner, brand new boat, brand new big Mercury engine, And we get there, the first thing the judge says is, we invite Mystic Crew. He says, I see there's a well location right across here, and I see there's a spar bank all the way around. Said, so they have to dredge that spar bank, right? Yeah. But I don't see any dredge spar along the bayou. Could they bring that drilling barge and all the tugs and everything up here without dredging? Oh, yeah, Judge, that bayou's 25 feet deep. Well, who owns it? Oh, we own it. We being the landowners. Oh, man, I could see a bell ringing there at the judge's head. Because this is the bayou that the crawfish were arrested in. He was arrested in the bayou. And we're ready to admit it, that's not the way he was fishing. You don't fish crawfish in 25 feet of water in the bayou. You fish in the swamps. So the judge said, can we go in that swamp? The guys with his brand new boat, new motor, said, Judge, we can go all over there with this, said, can't get my boat. So we went in. First thing the judge sees is, they got crawfish flags all over. He said, why don't you arrest those guys? Oh, that's last year's traps. Oh, no. Judge said, let me pull up some strings here. So he pulled up fresh bait full of big crawfish. And he said, don't y'all grade these crawfish? And the guy said, well, yeah. He said, well, look, those are, wouldn't that be, that's beautiful crawfish. Aren't they in international commerce? Don't we send a lot of those to France and Belgium? Yeah, the guy did agree. And he said, well, how deep's the water? Oh, it's only about a foot deep. Judge said, oh, pull up that willow tree. So he took out his pocket knife and he cut a willow branch and he stuck it in the water. And Judge is about, I guess, 6'2", and his hand was over his head. He said, hell, that water's 7 feet deep. Oh, no, Judge, you put that pole in the hole. He said, no, let's go. So, man, he all along, said, our best witness is the landowner's guy, So he said, then why are these trees dying? Well, because this place is underwater all the time, Judge. That's why it dies. Well, anyway, about a week later, the judge rendered his judgment. And what he said was, Mr. Daigle is not guilty because he is fishing in the waters of the nation. And that was our defense, that he was using waters in commerce, the waters are subject to title exchange, and they belong to the state, not to the claimant, Williams and Generate Lumber. And it didn't click with me that there was a planned purchase where the Corps was buying Cypress Swamp as a part of the 1981 governor's plan. They were buying this particular place where Larry Daigle had his nets. He had them both on Generate and on Williams. And it was 30,000 acres to be purchased at $1,500 an acre. My math is right, that's $45 million. So about a week after the judgment, the real estate attorney for the Corps in New Orleans called me, and I knew him real well, a fine gentleman. He said, Harold, you know anything about the Larry Daigle case? I said, I know all about it. I was in the middle of it from A to Z. He says, we got a final decision from that judge. I said, yeah, it's about a 30-page decision. And I said, the judge actually visited the site, and he had 5 days of trial. And his verdict, I think, will stand anywhere. Well, he said, no, we can't challenge it. We looked at it. He said, this is well written, well done. It's beyond challenge. And he said, what it means is, we can't buy this land. I said, you can't buy it, we already own? Well, Larry Daigle has saved the taxpayers $45 million. So, you don't read about any of these things in the paper, and I can't tell you why, other than that big landowners are offended, and often they're part of big business. They're part of the mystique of the wealth of Louisiana. And you know, when you read Mein Kampf, one of the things that Hitler says was, you tell a big lie often enough and loud enough, it becomes the truth. And that's where we are with land ownership in Louisiana. All this marsh out here, we have 5 million acres, all subject to tidal overflow. It all belongs to us. There's all kinds of people that claim it, but it really belongs to the people of Louisiana. It's sovereignty lands. We received it when we became a state, and we lost the Civil War, and during Reconstruction they passed all kinds of laws to get to sell these things that are ours. And the marshes were sold in the 1880 legislature, Act 75, paragraph 11. They set up the sale of the marsh, subject to tidal overflow, unsuitable for human habitation or cultivation. And we sold it at 12.5 cents an acre. A section was $80. A township was $2,600. And of course, it's sold quick. And one of the things that law didn't do was it distinguished between land and water. So we sold places like White Lake. White Lake is the 3rd largest lake in Louisiana. It's about 60,000 acres. It's all in Vermilion Parish. When you drive to Pecan Island, you're kind of driving around it. You can't drive to it. You can't get to it because it's surrounded by marsh. There's one well in there that is producing, when it was first drilled about 3 years ago, is producing $1.4 million a day. The state royalty of that is 22%. So the state should have been getting about $350,000 a day. And the parish is entitled to 10% of what the state gets. So that's $35,000 a day. And in a year, that's $7-8 million for a parish whose whole budget is only $5 million. And you know, when will we as a state wake up that people are stealing this from us? And that's one well of 297. Now, they're not all that big, but when you add up all this revenues going into private pockets instead of our pockets, it's a criminal thing, you know. And getting back to the big lie, we tell it often enough, and we listen to it. We think that land and marshland is privately owned. It's not. It all belongs to us. One day we'll have somebody sitting in the governor's chair with enough courage to say it's ours and we want it back. So with that, I'll kind of close and answer questions.
Bob?
Very briefly, I have known Harold Schoeffler for 40 years. I never knew that he could make such a good presentation. No notes, no pages, no reading, all this from memory, which tells me that he's dedicated to the cause and it's for the good of the state of Louisiana, and I thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay, come on up.
I wonder if Harold could give us a brief backdrop, if he's allowed, on the Keystone. Should I? Oh,
Sure.
All right, I see Cameron.
We want you on top.
I wonder, by the way, I'm fortunate that I didn't take 40 years to find out what a gifted and what a real contributor we have here. Everybody knows that. How fortunate we are. So the question is, I wonder if Harold would share with us what the backdrop is on Keystone. It's coming, it really isn't, and you have a clue to that. I
sure.
understand.
Yeah. Wow. Keystone, they made a mistake. The Canadian company that was building it started bragging about it. So it became a target for the environmental community. We got to kill Keystone because the tar sands oil were going to come down the Keystone pipeline. It wasn't just tar sands. It was the Balkan oil. 25% of it would have been the Balkan oil, which is in North Dakota, Northeast, and Montana. Enterprise, as of about a week ago, just finished the equivalent of Keystone. Is now in operation, and they did it very quietly. And the Canadian company is building pipelines into the Great Lakes, which will allow them to ship oil all over the world. But the problem with the Keystone was that it delayed pipeline construction, and it converted a lot of shipment of oil to rail. In 2008, we were at 40,000 barrels of oil per day by rail. We are now, as of end of 13, we were at 1 million barrels a day. Within 2 years, we'll be at 4 million barrels a day by rail. And, with somebody has the idea we're going to move the rails, away from the towns, that's not going to happen. The towns were built around the rails, so you're not going to change that. It's an enormous safety issue. And part of it is that, for instance, Enterprise Pipe and Koch were both building pipelines for the Balkan oil to go to Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Big refineries that produce a lot of oil for the East Coast, where you have an awful lot of customers. And both those projects were canceled because the Balkan oil producers wouldn't guarantee continuous use. So it's not just the issue of pipelines, it's the issue of how you move it around, how they can get the best price for it. So that's pushing a lot of this to rail. Rail has increased, so has barge lines. In the last 2 years, barge shipment of oil has increased 400 and some percent. Every company that can build barges now for oil is building at full blast 24 hours a day. The same with rail cars. Usually, like BNSF is one of the prosperous railroads in the country, they usually own the tracks and the engines. They don't use the rolling stock. But BNSF has ordered 6,000 tank cars. So this number is going to go up astronomically. That's, of course, the rail is slightly safer than truck, but it's a lot more hazardous, 87 times more hazardous than shipping by pipeline. But we're producing this oil, you got to have a way to move it. So, but that's been replaced, and one of the things that's done is usually tar sands oil is $25 cheaper than West Texas crude, and because of the completion of these pipelines, and it's all about cost. If you ship tar sands oil to Baton Rouge, you're at about $16 a barrel. If you ship it by pipeline, you're at $4 a barrel. So because of that availability of pipelines, and they mainly come into Cushing, Oklahoma, where you have the network to move it into Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Louisiana refineries, and that combination is about half of the refinery capacity in that country. So you get it to Cushing, you got it where you can move it almost anywhere. So that's happening. It's not a issue of good or bad, it's just what's happening.
Is there any other questions? Well, we have a gentleman that is a member of our organization. He spent a lot of time learning something about the Constitution. Maybe it's a timely part of our discussion. Maybe we can get something done concerning the oil and all the problems that we're having, where we should be getting a little bit better price, and the supplying should be coming possibly. But anyhow, we have another member that maybe want to say a few words, but in the essence of time, I'm going to have her on the next meeting, and that's Marlene King. Marlene had something special she'd like to talk about on the children coming to this country, and she's done some research, and she was going to be able to do that. We have a speaker speaking of that. I haven't got a final word, but Judge Kali Saloon retired is supposed to be our first meeting of this coming month. If you've ever heard him tell you about Lafayette, we have a great bit of information here from Harold. Kali's will certainly do the same for you. So just put that in your notes, and I entertain a motion that we adjourn, and we appreciate every one of you coming to the meeting this evening. Thank you.